I'll pause whenever you want, and you can go and yell all you want.
What you, congressman, and your fellow congressmen are going to do to rein in the megalomaniac in the White House.
I remember having the same discussion with Republicans when Biden was elected. The funny thing is, you're sitting here and a lot of you would probably say those January 6s who are yelling just as loud as you, who are upset just like you.
Hey, let's restore some order.
So
Stop
yelling at me is not going to get any answer, okay? I've seen Game of Thrones too, thank you. Let's go ahead and move on, because if you're not going to listen, to the answer, we might as well not discuss it.
Here on the floor of the United States House of Representatives, and my question is, where are my Republican colleagues? There's not a single one of my Republican colleagues here on the House floor. In fact, I am standing on the Republican side of the aisle, and there's not a single one in the chamber right now. While Donald Trump and Elon Musk and their group of teenage hackers are dismantling the federal government, not a single one is to be found here on the House floor this afternoon. So let me say to the American people, this is not normal. What is happening right now in this country is not normal, and Democrats are fighting back. We are fighting to defend the Constitution, the rule of law, the separation of powers, vital funding for our communities, the health and safety of our people, and saving our democracy, because what is happening in this country right now is not normal. Over the last 3 weeks since Donald Trump took office, federal agencies have been dismantled. Thousands of federal workers have been fired and put on leave and are left in limbo. Millions in federal funds have been frozen for our communities. And your private data has been hacked by a group of teenage software hackers at the Department of Treasury. And Elon Musk and Donald Trump are breaking the law daily inside of these agencies. In fact, not only are they breaking the law, they are violating the Constitution, appropriations law, statutory law. There are 55 court cases pending right now in front of federal courts. Federal stays filed by federal judges to stop Trump and Musk from these illegal activities. And Democrats are in control of the budget, not the president. And you are doing us a disservice to set that down and not stand up for us. And
as of this moment, I'm a voter. The reason why I say as of this moment, because I'm also a married woman who took my husband's last name. This means that my birth certificate does not match my legal name. On January 9th, 2025, you joined as a sponsor of HR 22 SAVE Act. This means that me and 69 million women like me who have taken their spouse's last name will not be eligible to vote. I want you to look me in the eye and tell me why you are trying to take away my right to vote.
This bill is going to take away 69 million people's right to vote. I disagree.
Every single news outlet, Fox, CNN, every news outlet that is reporting on this are saying that it is going to make it incredibly difficult for any woman who has a married last name to vote. It is a voter suppression law that you signed on as a sponsor of, and I want to know why you're scared for me to vote.
If you'll let me talk, I think you'll see that we were just down at an IT conference and a bipartisan approach to voter ID. Now, they actually have digital ID that we can do in the future that's going to solve a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. And this is a Democrat, right?
Good morning, YouTube, and happy Saturday. I love Saturdays. Saturdays are like my relaxation days, so I absolutely love Saturdays. But let's get into the topic at hand. So, I've been watching coverage of this MAGA representative that is a rep for Georgia, and basically he had a town hall, and his constituents like laid into him intensely. Like they were really upset. They were upset about several things, but the gist of it was basically they were upset about Donald Trump referring to himself as a king. They were upset about how Elon Musk is basically slashing all of these programs and just basically firing people left and right. They were also upset. One particular woman basically was telling the congressman, you co-sponsored legislation that is going to make it more challenging for me to vote because I am a married woman who took my husband's last name, and now my name on my driver's license is not the same as my name on my birth certificate. And the voter suppression legislation that this congressman co-sponsored is basically going to make it challenging and difficult for this particular woman to vote because she changed her last name. And so I wanted to talk about those three areas, with Trump being referring to himself as king, Elon Musk having all of this power and slashing and cutting jobs, and then this woman's story about voter suppression. So the first thing, Trump referring to himself as king, I was shocked that that bothered them. I know why it should bother every American, but Donald Trump has been doing things like this, not necessarily saying that he's king, not saying the words verbatim, but his behavior has been very king-like behavior. What did they think he meant when he said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it? Like, what did they think he meant when he basically said during the campaign, I just need you guys to vote for me this time. You're not going to have to worry about it in the future. And it's my issue with Republicans. I am starting to think this is a truly uniquely Republican thing where they vote against their own self-interest, all the while saying that people that are more left-leaning or liberal people vote against our own self-interest. But I don't vote against my own self-interest. I vote for freedom. I vote for democracy. I vote for people to have the freedom to love whomever they want. I vote for people to have the freedom to identify however they find necessary. I vote for the freedom for all of us to be included, to have a diverse, equitable society. So I'm not voting against my own self-interest, but it seems like you guys are. Because now you're so up in arms and you're so upset about the things that Donald Trump is doing, but Donald Trump has been saying these things since he became into the political climate. He's been saying these things for forever. And so it's the reason I say that it's uniquely Republican because, like I said, in regards to Nancy Reagan, I talked about this story on my channel already. Nancy Reagan was adamantly against stem cell research until her husband got a condition that she thought stem cell research can be beneficial to, and then she was on board. Liz Cheney, for instance, Liz Cheney's sister was a lesbian who wanted to marry her wife. Liz Cheney was adamant and super against same-sex marriage until her sister now, came out as a lesbian and she wanted to marry her wife, which of course I'm 100% in support of. But not until it hits their doorstep, not until it happens to them that they're outraged. So I was watching this town hall and I felt bad for some of the people only because it's like they push the narrative that people on the left vote against their own self-interest, and now they're literally realizing that they are the ones that vote against their own self-interest. So that was the first thing with Trump referring to himself as king, and apparently these people were really upset about that. The second thing was Elon Musk slashing all of these programs. Now, there are some people in this country that is against immigration. They feel like we shouldn't have immigrants apparently, or we should close our borders altogether. But you guys were in favor of a man from South Africa coming in and dictating what happens in our government. So now that Elon Musk has, I wouldn't necessarily say slipped up, because at first I was going to say now that he slipped up and told you what he really think, basically saying that Americans are not, I guess, up to par. I don't know, because he was basically trying to justify bringing in the people that he's bringing in because they're all basically immigrants. And so he said something to the effect, and I don't want to misquote him, but he basically, him and Vivek Ramaswamy were basically insinuating that Americans weren't smart enough to hold these jobs. And so now that you have, I guess, the right kind of immigrant, the immigrant with money and power and resources and the richest man in the world, now you have this particular immigrant telling you that you're not worthy, that you're not educated enough, you're not smart enough, you're not capable enough, and now you're mad. But it was okay when he was helping Trump win the election. It was okay when it was for your side, when it was for your betterment. But now that it's not in particular for your betterment, now everybody's in an uproar. So that was the second thing that I like, basically what they were complaining about and what they were talking about. The third thing was this woman, and she was basically talking about voter suppression. And so she said, she stood up and she was telling the congressman that, you know, she got married to her husband. She took her husband's last name. And so her name on her birth certificate, of course, is different than her name on her driver's license, which is going to make it more difficult for her to vote. And this particular Republican co-sponsored a bill that is basically going to make it more challenging for her to vote. Now, here's my issue with this. When you think of voter suppression, you think more about marginalized communities, black and brown people, black people in particular, fighting for their rights to vote, right? And so I believe Republican strongholds, like where this congressman is a rep for, they don't associate voter suppression with them, because they have not had to fight and advocate and die for the right to vote. So they are not now, the Women's Suffrage Act, 1919, 1920, women were given the right to vote. But we were still fighting for equality and the right to vote and all of these things past that, you know, past the 1920 Suffrage Act. So white women, Republican women, like these women that are in Republican strongholds, they don't associate voter suppression with them. And so this woman was enraged that now it's going to be more challenging for her to vote because of this legislation that was put into place. But this is the problem in America. It seems as if we have a certain, I wouldn't even say a certain group of people. It just seems like we have people who only cares when it hits their doorstep. So now voter suppression and all of these rules and regulations and these legislations that are put into place to suppress people's votes now is so super problematic because it's happening to you. It's at your doorstep. Because remember, and I'm not exactly sure if it was Georgia, I believe it was Georgia in Atlanta. Remember a couple of years ago, they proposed legislation, and I believe it was passed, that people weren't able to get water. Like, people weren't able to walk around and give people water while they vote. Now, let me tell you why this is problematic. If you live in a larger city, like I used to live in Chicago, I moved out into the suburbs in Illinois. But when you live in places like Chicago, you're gonna stand in line to vote. Like, Chicago is a huge city. It's a very diverse city. I mean, there is segregation in Chicago for sure, but we are diverse in like race, socioeconomic class, all of those things. And normally larger cities like that, it takes longer to vote. So people in Republican strongholds, they don't necessarily have that issue because they live in smaller rural towns. And so they are not concerned with someone getting water, or I'm not going to say they're not concerned. They seem to be against people getting water while they were standing in line because that negatively affects Democratic strongholds, not them. And so now that voter suppression is hitting your doorstep, now that you're seeing that lawmakers are putting in legislation that's going to make it more challenging for people to vote, now you're enraged. But Republicans were okay with water not being able to be given out while people wait to vote, because they knew that was going to negatively affect Democratic strongholds. So until we all get on board with basic human rights, we're going to keep doing, I mean, it's going to keep going round and round. It's going to be so much division. And I'm not saying that we all have to get on board with policy, because people are different. No, we're not monolithic. We believe different things. We advocate for different things. We want different things. But we all should be able to get on board with basic human rights. Not only when it hit our doorstep, not only when it negatively affects us, but the reason, and because I had a commenter basically say, nobody's advocating, or nobody wants trans, whatever. I want people to have the freedom to identify the way they find necessary. I don't understand it necessarily, because I've never felt that I was anything different than what I am. So I don't understand the mindset of a trans person, but I do fight for their right to identify the way they find necessary. That's their business. And that's what freedom is. Freedom is giving people the right to live their lives the way they find necessary, as long as they're not being harmful to anyone, as long as they're not doing anything illegal, immoral. That's their choice. It's not my choice. It's not anything that's in my everyday life, but that's their choice. And I believe in freedom. So I was watching these clips, and I understand the Republicans and the constituents, they were very upset. And I was like, yeah, you're upset now that it's happening to you, now that you're being harmed, now that you're being negatively affected. Because Donald Trump has been talking about, I can shoot people on Fifth Avenue and you're not going to have to vote anymore after this election. He's been saying these things. And so now everybody's up in arms about him referring to himself as king. What did you think he was saying? Like, what did you think, I can shoot people on Fifth Avenue? What did you think that meant? It means I'm above the law. I am king. That's what it means. So why is everybody upset now? Okay. Because I was watching the town hall, and I'm like, they seem pretty pissed about things that this man has been doing since he's been on the political scene. Like, why are you pissed now? Because it affects you now. Because it's at your doorstep now. So now you're mad. Because it's okay for it to happen to other people. Because we've been kicking and yelling and screaming like this man acts as if he's above the law, and you guys were A-okay with it. But now you are being affected. Now it hits your doorstep, and now it's a problem. So, FAFO continues, apparently. I will talk to you guys later. I watched that town hall, and I'm just like, this is very interesting. But again, happy Saturday. I will talk to you guys later. Have a great day. Bye.